I die, I want them to play Britney Spears. That way I won't feel so bad about being dead, and the congregation will know that there's something worse than death. Well, we dated off and on and through high school. And
I was an officer in the sophomore class and was supposed to go to the sophomore tucker, and I didn't have a date.
She was desperate.
They didn't tell us not to date till we were 16 in those days. And by the time we were 16, we were pretty much in love. I know my heart went pitter-pat every time I saw him, and his must have too. One time I got mad at him. He coaxed me back.
Only one time?
And I knew he must have liked me or he wouldn't have done that.
Well, I was down there one time, she said, "Why don't you go home?" And I did, and it made her angry. We danced all the school dances. They were held in the old Davis High Gym. Whether it was a wintertime dance or a springtime, they had a theme for all of the dances, and we'd usually get some fairly good orchestras out of Salt Lake or Ogden or something.
When we were growing up, the dancing was very special. You'd get the great big bands like Glenn Miller and Stan Kenton at Lagoon. They'd come in to the Rainbow Rendezvous in Salt Lake. Everybody danced in those days.
It was odd compared with nowadays. We'd dance with each other, a boy and a girl. And that has changed over the years.
When we were juniors, they had the time to get ready for elections for the student body officers. I was running for vice president. Jay, I think I'm the one that nominated him and helped him with a little campaign, an advertising campaign, to run for secretary of the student body. It was Stan Smoot and myself and Jay that became the student body officers for 1947-48. That was special to have that honor. He offered a diamond ring to me at Christmas time that year, and I just felt like I was planning to go to college, and that was just too soon to accept a diamond ring, although I was very much in love with him. And
she wasn't too sure, though, see.
We got married that year. It was the happiest day of my life when we got married. We were married in Las Vegas. Our parents were both there. Both sets of parents were there with us, and the stake president, Brian L. Bunker, married us.
But we were the only couple I know of that had both of their parents during our honeymoon. It was wonderful.
The 4th of March, 1949, Jadine was born then in December. And when we had Jadine sealed to us, and we were sealed in the Salt Lake Temple, that was our great desire. It was a very special day.
Well, I remember Jadine, especially when she got older. Well, I remember one of the first things, we lived in an apartment in the basement of Grandma and Grandpa Adams, Clyde and Ruth. She tipped over a lamp and broke it. And one of probably some of her first words, she says, "Clyde fix." That was Grandpa Clyde's name. Then she got older, when she was probably 12, started playing piano, and oftentimes she'd never had to coax her to play. She'd practice on her own. Sometimes I'd go to bed while she's still practicing the piano.
When she was 16, she was had her own recital. She played all of Rhapsody in Blue, which she memorized. Claire de Lune. We were so proud of her. And it wasn't long before Robert was coming along, and when he was born, Grandpa was so delighted to get a little boy, and I was too. He was a beautiful little baby.
Robert was as much like his grandpa Clyde as any of them. In fact, he even looks a little like him, a hairdo that he has. But Grandpa Clyde could fix anything, and that's the way Robert was. He was able to fix things and wasn't afraid to delve into something to repair it. Whenever we needed an electrician, usually call Robert.
Robert was such a cute little boy. Everybody just thought he was wonderful. We did too.
Well, he still is.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
When we actually built the house, wondered how we'd ever pay for it, but Grandpa had saved $1,000 when we were married, and he worked for his father on the farm. The house actually, the original house, cost us $5,000. Now you'd pay $7,000 for a building permit.
Probably took us a week or so to get the forms up, the foundation. Then we got all the neighbors here, and all the concrete was mixed with the electric mixer out here. 2 men pitching the gravel, the cement, and the sand in. And then others wheeling it around, and it was a big long day. We probably had
12 or 14 men, and it was
here.
Neighbors that just came and helped us, didn't expect to be paid.
Then the following year, 1951, December, we moved in. We had the hardwood floors throughout, except the kitchen was all finished. The bedrooms weren't painted. This room was painted, the front room was painted. And we always had the philosophy or the policy, when we get $1, we'd buy a board, we'd get 50 cents, we'd paint it. And so over the years, we eventually put in this rock fireplace and added on and put a garage on and different things like that.
So we were glad to get moved in and have more room for our family, and this room seemed very big for a long time because we didn't have much furniture in here. But it was a wonderful place to raise our family. It was so snowy when Evan was born, and it was dirt roads up here in a really small lane going over to Fairfield. I figured the only way I'd get out of here is to hang on the back of the tractor and have Jay take me over to a road that was passable. He told the county snowplow drivers about it, and boy, they kept that road clean so we could get out.
Howard Nalder, when he found out she's expecting, brought 2 trucks and the road grader over, and he says, "I'll leave a man here all night if you want him so that you get out."
Just 14 months after Evan was born, Mary was born. That was the hardest time for me. I don't know how people deal with twins, but Evan wasn't walking and Mary was born, and it was hard. And,
But it was worth it.
It was worth it. What wonderful children they were. And always the older children were glad to have the baby. It was a little over 2 years before Adams was born, in June of 1957. And as he grew up, he was red-headed, a little bit sandy-haired.
And freckles.
Charming little fellow. Everybody just was delighted with him. He was shy. And 2 years after Adams was born, 2 years and 1 month, Joseph was born. Well, we had 6 children by then, and it was quite a job. It was 4 years later that Tom was born. It was kind of hard for me to accept another baby. I thought 6 children was quite a few. Before he was born, I began to feel good about having a baby, and Tom was born with anemic blood. Because I'm Rh negative and Grandpa's positive, and some people are fortunate to get 3 children. Here we were on our 7th, and they took Tom and changed his blood twice while he was in the hospital, a new baby. They'd put the blood in one of the little feet and take it out, I think, the other one. Then they'd check the blood and make sure it wasn't too anemic. And it took a day or two, and finally it started to yellow in it started to go down, and we were able to bring him home, and how thankful we were for Tom. After we had Tom, we were worried that Sam would be born sick too, but he was a negative baby and was just fine. We was going to have another little baby, and all the children were so happy when we were going to have a baby. They loved little babies. And he was born a little 8-pound boy that was beautiful. James Adams Love was his name. But he was so anemic that he died in 12 hours. Even after that, 2 years later, we had William Adams Love stillborn. And then, it wasn't 20 years later, a lady I found out was drawing pictures of babies with Jesus Christ, and she had one that she'd done of 2 little boys. And after we got the picture of Jesus Christ with those 2 little boys, I made a Christmas card out of it because it began to mean so much more to me, those 2 little boys that were gone. But the hardest thing was for us, I guess, in our whole life was when Sam was killed. He was riding a bicycle from North Ogden to work in Ogden and was killed one morning. That's hard to have him go. We've got his picture over here with Jesus Christ as well. The children were all in 4-H. In fact, Robert, we helped him do quite a few things, and he was motivated to do them. They each had a cow to show at the fair, and Robert had some sheep, and one year he bought 100 sheep. He started out with a combination wire fence around his sheep down here in the field, and I said he taught them to be high jumpers. They learned how to jump the fence.
And we'd go and raise it up, and they still jump it.
So they got out several times, and they'd head right up and go clear out in the hills towards South Weber. It was a frantic job getting them gathered back, and it seemed like they did it when Robert was off to school. He did gardening, he did hens, he got some chickens, sheep, pigs. He also had his 4-H book. He won that project, and he was able to get a free trip to Washington, D.C. when he was about 17 years old. What a wonderful honor that was to have. And the pictures of him taken with the senators. He's the handsomest guy you ever saw. I know it kind of started to fall for Dana, and he once said he would dream that one day he would have a little blue-eyed boy and this beautiful wife, and how happy he'd be. And that really came true for him. But when we went this one time, and Tom was the baby, as I recall, and we went up to Jackson.
Went down below the dam about a mile and put
had
the raft in. And
a white, is that when we had our white?
The 1959 white
station
Ford station wagon. We started floating. We waved bye to Grandma and Tom, and we floated down the river.
Except Grandpa had the keys to the car in his pocket. I was supposed to meet him down at the end of down to Moose, and I was frantic. So finally I got somebody to take me up to the lodge at Jackson, and I rented a car. It was a smaller car, and rented the car and drove down to Moose to get them.
But we had a lot of fond memories in our trips up there.
One year our car wouldn't take us anywhere. It was too old, and so we went up to Hobbs Pond, and we had a raft, and that was about as fun as anything we've ever done.
Floated up with the life raft out on the dam there. Nobody around then. Had to get permission from Melvin Jakes, who owned the ground around it.
The children wanted to go to Disneyland, but Grandpa didn't want to go very bad. We never did make it to Disneyland in all the time we were raising our children.
Disneyland was just a glorified lagoon.
Then when they all got married, and we had so many grandchildren, sometimes we'd have to run away and hide from them.
But we finally had to develop this policy. You're always welcome in our home, day or night. All we ask is you come after breakfast, bring your own lunch, and leave before supper time.
Our grandchildren have been such a great joy to us. They've given us great honor in the way they've conducted their lives. And we are so thankful for every one of them. We had 44 grandchildren, and then we've added 6 more, so that makes 50. We're moving on to our 60th great-grandchild. So it's hard to keep up with all of them, but oh, we love them so much. And we try to be a good example. I try to communicate with them.
It's getting difficult when you kneel down at night to say your prayers and start naming off all their grandchildren. Sometimes bless what's his name and bless what's your name. So you get them all in there. A small boy, I had to help on the farm. My father had probably 150 head of ewes. He'd lamb them out in the spring every year. It's my job to feed the bum lambs. That's the ones the mother couldn't take care of or the mother wouldn't accept, and you'd feed them with a bottle. That was a lot of fun because they're so energetic, wagging their little tails as they drank their milk. Then in the spring of the year, we'd what we called the sagebrush pasture up here. We'd take them up there to eat the early grass, the June grass, while it was still green. And then later, in May I think it was, he'd send them with the Marks brothers up in Cottonwood for the summer. And they'd herd them with their herd, and then in the fall they could bring them in, separate them out, and we'd bring the sheep back down here, and he'd sell the lambs and keep the ewes for another year. One thing about the Marks brothers, they were very honest. They were Germans, lived in West Ogden there. Dad would go up, pick the sheep up, and us kids would go up and help. They'd hire someone in a truck and wagons to haul them back down here. Roy Marks used to say, "I don't understand it, George. You didn't lose one lamb this time to the coyotes and that. We lost several of them." He could have said, "George, all those lambs that were lost were yours," but he was so honest about that. I remember that well, how honest they were and how well they treated my father. There some time ago, I remember someone saying that when their oldest child or their child graduated from high school, they always took them on a trip. And one fellow says his son had taken his daughter when she graduated from Weber High on a trip to Italy. Someone else says, "Well, my father took me there." I said, "My father's just like that." "Well, where did you go, Jay?" "My father took me out in the hayfield." And I was working on the farm. I thought it was a wonderful life, you know.
We had 2 horses in Clearfield. My dad told me when I was about 8 years old that I was going to rake the hay and drive the horse. And I was so scared, I can't. He sat on the bar of the rake and took my foot, and when it had to be dumped, he'd push my foot down and help drive the horse. Old Dick was a good old mild horse, and he went around the field at least 5 times with me, and then he got off and let me go ahead and drive the horse and do the raking. And I say my dad knew how to build confidence in a little girl that didn't want to try things. Tell him how many horses you had.
We had about 20 head of horses. Dad had his own stallion. The old stallion was named Mose. Dad took good care of those horses. One time, it was in July, we'd gone out on the dry farm up here, and it was a Sunday morning too, and Dad, the reason he went out early, get up 4 o'clock in the morning, that's before this stupid daylight savings time. But that spring, he was out plowing with these 6 head of horses, and one of my brothers or sisters gone out and needed some money, and they used to have a purse, and they'd keep their currency and their coins in this little purse about the size of your hand. And he'd give him money, and then apparently it didn't get in his pocket. He lost it. We went out there and looked all over that field, a 42-acre field. and we couldn't find it. Dad said if he ever found that purse, he'd give the money to the bishop. The change could be to whoever found it. It was $43.75. Anyway, going along, he'd work early that morning. When it started to get warm, he quit because he took care of his horses. He was going along, and I was sitting there with him, this rod that turned under the ground, raising the clods, and it'd pull the weeds out too. I was just sitting there watching that, and all of a sudden that purse come up out of the ground. But he never did work after that on a Sunday. He gave that money to the bishop for tithing, and I got the 75 cents. See, 75 cents would buy 15 Hostess cupcakes, you know, the double cakes. They were a nickel a piece at that time. A lot of fond memories as a boy. It was a wonderful time to grow up. Never had a bike when I was a kid. It wouldn't do any good, all these graveled roads. We always had a horse to ride. I had good parents, good father, good mother that was kind and gentle. If I have any regrets of growing up as a boy, it would be that my father and mother had to work so hard to take care of us. We didn't want for anything because there was nothing out there like they have now to want, TVs and all these fancy electronic gadgets. We never had those. Most of our fun we created on our own, either ride and get with some of the neighbors and go someplace, go up to the dam here and ride around, play up there. It was just a good time to grow up.
I had good memories of our home in Clearfield. There was a row of poplar trees down one side. A lot of pioneers had those. And Melvin Wood was the bishop, wonderful bishop. And my dad, they gave him the job of the hall manager. They had a hall there. They could tilt the floor for movies and leave it straight for the ward dinners or whatever they had. And he knew how to operate all that. And they'd come with movies every Saturday night. The adults had to pay a dime to get in, and the children 5 cents. Because my dad was the hall manager, they let me in free. And my cousin Elaine Rampton that lived up the street from us, she was kind of jealous.
When I was a boy, we had a small home. I had 4 sisters. They had one room. The boys had another. We had one bed, 3 in a bed. In the wintertime, I didn't mind that. I'd like to sleep in the middle because it was warmer. There was no heat in the basement. You know, I never slept alone in my life until I got married.
December 7th, 1941, World War II. We were at church, and even at church, somebody came into the church and they announced that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. And when we came home, Connie had been listening to the radio and reported it also. April of 1942, the surveyors were out all over our farm. They decided that they had to have a Navy supply depot near the railroads. They started bulldozing down fences and all things, and we were given very little time to get the house moved. Everybody that had to move, and there was quite a few farmers that had to move, a lot of them moved their houses. And people knew how to move houses then, and they took our house back up Main Street and turned where the church is, back to the highway and back down. Because Antelope Drive then had 2 big wooden bridges over the top of it. It couldn't carry the weight of a house. And then we brought the house down and got to almost home to where we were going to put the house, and left it in the middle of the road for the night. Grandpa Clyde got up to the wires and wired some power into the house, and we had lights in the house and slept in the house that night in the road. And 1 car came by in that whole night on Antelope Drive.
Remain true and faithful. The only sure thing there is to have trust in our Father in heaven and know that Jesus Christ was our Savior, is our Savior. You know, and also hard work, and I think all of them have learned what work is about. Enjoy work, just to be true and faithful, and also as a family to stay close together, help one another out, be kind and generous.
but they've given us great honor. Our children have been so honorable and good, and we're so thankful for our family.